Be me, Norma, 28 years old, married to John for 3 years, work as a project coordinator for a nonprofit. Consider myself pretty enlightened about gender dynamics and power structures. Unlike most women, I actually think critically about relationship patterns. Anyway, been noticing some concerning behaviors from John lately. He expects intimacy just because we're married, like he thinks he's entitled to my body or something. This is literally how patriarchal relationships function. Women give and give while men just take. Decide to implement a more equitable system in our marriage. If John wants physical intimacy, he needs to demonstrate he deserves it. Not through grand gestures or manipulation, but through basic respect. Things like doing dishes without being asked, remembering important dates, actually listening when I talk instead of just waiting for his turn. Start being more intentional about when we're intimate. If he interrupts me during the day, he's no intimacy that night. If he leaves his socks on the floor, he was clearly not respecting our shared space. If he watches sports instead of engaging in meaningful conversation, equals showing his priorities. John starts getting weird about it after a few weeks. Norma, why do I feel like I'm being tested all the time? Explain to him that I'm not testing him. I'm just being more conscious about consent. True consent means enthusiastic participation, not just going along with expectations. He gets this frustrated look. But we used to just, be spontaneous. Tell him spontaneity often means the woman ignoring her own feelings to accommodate male desires. He doesn't seem to get it. Few more weeks pass. John's getting increasingly agitated. Keeps saying things like, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, which honestly just proves he never had to think about his behavior before. One evening, he sits me down for a serious conversation. Oh boy, here we go. Norma, I need to talk to you about something that's really bothering me. His voice has this edge to it I rarely hear. I feel like you're keeping score in our relationship, like intimacy is something I have to earn. Explain to him that intimacy shouldn't be automatic just because we're married. That's literally how women get trapped in unfulfilling relationships. But it feels like you're punishing me, he says, getting more animated. It feels like you decide whether we're intimate based on whether I've met some checklist you have in your head. Tell him that's not punishment. That's just me being more aware of my own desires. Maybe I'm just not in the mood when he's been inconsiderate. Isn't that natural? Shouldn't attraction be connected to how someone treats you? Norma, he says, running his hands through his hair, this isn't about attraction. This is about you systematically withholding affection when I don't meet your standards. His voice is getting louder now. Do you realize how that makes me feel? Like I'm some kind of employee you're managing? Honestly, getting a little annoyed at his tone. Explain that women have been conditioned to ignore their own needs for centuries. What? Maybe he's just uncomfortable because he can't take my compliance for granted anymore. That's not what this is about, he snaps. Whoa, aggressive much? Then what is it about, John? It's about you turning our relationship into a transaction. It's about you making me feel like I have to perform for basic affection from my wife. He's definitely raising his voice now. Do you understand how humiliating that is? How lonely that makes me feel? Point out that he's getting very emotional about this. Maybe he should examine why he feels entitled to my body regardless of how he treats me. This just makes him angrier. Entitled? Entitled? Norma, we're married. Marriage is supposed to be about wanting each other, not about earning access. Tell him that's a very patriarchal view of marriage. Women aren't just available for sex whenever men want it. We have our own feelings and desires that should be respected. But you don't have feelings and desires anymore, he shouts. You have conditions and requirements. There's a difference. Conversation ends with him sleeping on the couch. Honestly, his reaction is pretty revealing. Shows how deeply internalized his male privilege is. Things get worse over the next month. John starts tracking my behavior too, like he's trying to figure out my system, which is honestly kind of pathetic. Catch him one day writing notes in his phone, ask him what he's doing. Trying to figure out what I did wrong yesterday since you clearly weren't interested in being close to me. This is exactly the kind of transactional thinking that's the problem. Explain that he shouldn't be doing nice things just to get sex. Then what the hell am I supposed to do, Norma? He's practically yelling again. You say I shouldn't expect intimacy, but then you make it clear that my behavior affects whether you want to be intimate. You say I shouldn't do nice things to get sex, but then you're less interested when I don't do nice things. What am I supposed to do with that? Tell him maybe he should just be a good partner because he wants to be, not because he expects rewards. I thought I was being a good partner, he says, his voice cracking a little. I work, I contribute to the household, I try to be supportive, but apparently none of that matters if I forget to ask about your day or if I want to watch a game sometimes. He's really not getting this. Explain that those are just basic expectations, not special efforts worthy of reward. Then what would make you actually want to be with me? He asks. And honestly, that's kind of a loaded question. Another few weeks pass. John's becoming increasingly distant, barely talks to me except when necessary, which is actually kind of manipulative if you think about it. Like he's withholding emotional intimacy because he's not getting physical intimacy. Decide to address this head on. John, you've been very cold lately. Cold. He laughs, but not in a happy way. Cold. Norma, I'm trying to give you space to want me naturally, like you said, but apparently that's not working either. I never said to shut me out emotionally. Oh, so emotional intimacy I'm supposed to give freely, but physical intimacy I have to earn. How is that fair? He's got that angry edge in his voice again. How is any of this fair, Norma? Explain that emotional and physical intimacy are different. Emotional intimacy is about communication and connection. Physical intimacy is about desire and attraction. They're connected, he shouts. They're supposed to be connected. You can't just separate them like that. His face is getting red now. Do you know what it's like to live with someone who analyzes everything you do to decide if you deserve basic affection? Do you know what it's like to have your wife treat you like you're on probation? Tell him he's being dramatic. I'm just being more conscious about my choices. Conscious? You're being calculating, Norma. There's a difference. We end up having this same fight every few weeks. John gets increasingly frustrated each time. Keeps saying things like, this isn't what marriage is supposed to be like. And I feel like I'm living with a roommate who occasionally decides to tolerate me. Honestly, starting to think we might just be incompatible. Some people can't handle being in relationships with women who have clear boundaries. The final blow-up happens on a Saturday morning. John's been quiet all week. Sitting at the kitchen table with coffee, he looks up at me. Norma, we need to talk. Really talk. Here we go again. I've been thinking about this for months, he starts. His voice is different this time, less angry, more tired. I've been trying to understand your perspective, trying to change, trying to be better. But I realize now that this isn't about me being better. This is about you having complete control. Interrupt to tell him that's not true. It's about mutual respect and consent. No, he says firmly. Let me finish. His voice is getting that edge again. You've turned our entire relationship into a system where you hold all the power. You decide when we're close, you decide what behavior deserves reward, you decide the terms of everything. John, I'm not done, he shouts, louder than I've ever heard him. Do you realize that I haven't felt wanted by my own wife in over a year? Do you understand that I feel like I'm begging for scraps of affection from someone who's supposed to love me? His voice cracks again. I don't feel like your husband, Norma. I feel like some guy you're training. And the worst part is, you think you're being progressive by doing it. Try to explain that I'm just trying to create a more equitable dynamic. Equitable? He stands up now, his chair scraping loudly. There's nothing equitable about this. You get emotional support, financial support, domestic partnership, everything you want from me. But physical intimacy, that's conditional on whether I perform well enough. That's not how I see it. Then how do you see it? He demands. Because from where I'm sitting, you've weaponized the most vulnerable part of our relationship to control my behavior. Tell him that's a really harsh way to put it. I'm just being more intentional about intimacy. Intentional, he repeats bitterly. Is that what you call it when you decide I don't deserve affection because I didn't load the dishwasher the right way? Point out that the dishwasher thing was about respect for shared spaces. Everything is about something else with you, he explodes. Everything I do or don't do becomes part of your calculation about whether I'm worthy of basic human connection. Do you know what this has done to my self-esteem? Do you know what it's like to wonder every day whether your wife will find you acceptable enough to touch? Honestly, he's being pretty aggressive about this. Tell him he needs to lower his voice. No, I don't need to lower my voice. I need you to hear me. He's really shouting now. I need you to understand that you've taken something beautiful and turned it into a performance review. John, you're being very dramatic. Dramatic. He's almost screaming. Norma, I can't even remember the last time you touched me just because you wanted to. Everything has to be earned. Everything has to be deserved. Try to interject, but he's not stopping. And the worst part is how you justify it, like you're some kind of enlightened feminist for turning your husband into a dancing monkey. That crosses a line. Tell him that's completely inappropriate language. What's inappropriate is what you've done to our marriage, he shouts. Geos, he shouts back. What's inappropriate is making me feel like a beggar in my own home. The fight goes on for like 2 hours. John just keeps getting angrier and angrier, saying things like, this isn't love, this is manipulation, and you've turned marriage into a game where only you know the rules. Finally, he seems to run out of steam, sits back down, puts his head in his hands. I can't do this anymore, Norma. His voice is quiet now, but there's something final in it. I can't live like this anymore. Ask him what he means. He looks up at me with these tired, angry eyes. I mean, I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. Wait, what? That seems like a pretty extreme reaction to a disagreement about relationship dynamics. John, that's ridiculous. We can work through this. No, he says, standing up again. No, we can't, because you don't think there's anything to work through. That's not true. Isn't it? Norma, in all these months of fighting about this, have you ever once considered that maybe you're wrong? Have you ever thought that maybe what you're doing is harmful? He's getting loud again. Because I've been questioning everything about myself, wondering if I'm selfish or entitled or terrible, while you just keep doubling down on your system. Tell him that's not fair. I've been trying to explain my perspective. Explaining isn't the same as questioning, he shouts. You explain your perspective like it's obviously correct, and I'm just too stupid or brainwashed to understand it. Do you know what the really sad part is? I actually started believing you for a while. I thought maybe I was entitled, maybe I was part of some patriarchal problem. But you know what I realized? Wanting to feel desired by your spouse isn't patriarchal. Wanting affection that isn't conditional on performance isn't entitled. It's human. The conversation continues for another hour. John keeps saying he's done, but then keeps talking, getting angrier each time he explains himself. Saying things like, you've made me feel worthless in my own marriage, and this isn't what partnership looks like. Eventually, he storms out of the house, doesn't come back until late that night, sleeps on the couch again. The next week is weird. John barely speaks to me. When he does, it's just logistics, very cold and distant. On Friday, he sits me down again. I've talked to a lawyer, he says. His voice is calm, but his hands are shaking a little. I'm filing the papers next week. Try to talk him out of it. Suggest couples counseling. Norma, he interrupts, I've been thinking about this constantly. I've tried to see your side. I really have. But I can't be in a relationship where love is conditional on my behavior meeting someone else's standards. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He asks, and his voice has that angry edge again. Explain to me how what you've been doing is different from conditioning. Explain to me how making physical intimacy dependent on my performance isn't manipulative. Try to explain the difference between boundaries and manipulation. Boundaries, he laughs bitterly. Boundaries are about what you will and won't accept. What you're doing is about controlling what you do through rewards and punishment. He's getting louder again. There's a huge difference, Norma. Tell him he's twisting my words. I'm not twisting anything. I'm finally seeing clearly. You know what a boundary would be? Saying, I don't want to be intimate when I'm upset with you. That's a boundary. What you're doing is saying, I'll only be intimate when you've proven you deserve it. That's control. And you don't even see the difference. You think you're being progressive, but you're being manipulative. The final conversation happens a few days later. John has the divorce papers with him. Last chance, Norma, he says. Can you honestly tell me you think what you've been doing is healthy? Tell him that I think I've been trying to create a more conscious relationship. Conscious, he repeats, shaking his head. You keep using these words like they mean something different when you say them. He sits across from me at our kitchen table. Norma, answer me honestly. In the past year, have you ever been intimate with me just because you wanted to be? Not because I had earned it, not because I had been good, just because you felt love and desire. Think about it for a moment. Tell him that spontaneous desire is often just internalized patriarchal conditioning. That's not an answer to my question. His voice is getting tight with anger again. That's you deflecting again, turning this into some abstract political theory instead of dealing with what you've done to us. I'm not deflecting. Yes, you are, he shouts, slamming his hand on the table. Every time I try to talk about how this feels, you turn it into a lecture about patriarchy and conditioning. Every time I try to explain how lonely and rejected I feel, you explain why my feelings are politically incorrect. He's really losing it now. Do you know how that feels, Norma? Do you know what it's like to have your pain dismissed as ignorance? Try to calm him down. Tell him I never dismissed his pain. You dismiss it every time you explain it away, he screams. Every time you tell me my feelings are just patriarchal conditioning, you're dismissing them. Every time you act like wanting to feel wanted is some kind of male entitlement, you're dismissing me. He's breathing hard now, face red with anger. I've spent months feeling like there's something wrong with me, like I'm broken or selfish for wanting my wife to actually want me. Months wondering if maybe I am just some entitled jerk who doesn't understand consent. But you know what I finally realized? Ask him what. I realized that what you're doing has nothing to do with feminism or consent or any of that. His voice is shaking with rage. What you're doing is about power. You like having complete control over the most intimate part of our relationship. You like being able to decide whether I'm worthy of affection. You like being the gatekeeper who gets to judge whether I've been good enough. Tell him that's completely wrong. Is it? He demands. Then why won't you give this up? If it's not about control, why can't you just love me without conditions? Explain that all love has some conditions. That's just realistic. Not like this, he explodes. Not where every interaction gets evaluated for whether it meets your standards. Not where physical affection becomes a reward you dole out for good behavior. He grabs the divorce papers. I'm done trying to earn my wife's love, Norma. His voice breaks a little. I'm done feeling like a failure every time you decide I haven't been good enough. I'm done living with someone who thinks love is something you deserve rather than something you give. Try one last time to explain my perspective. Tell him that maybe he just can't handle being with a woman who has clear boundaries. Boundaries, he screams. There's that word again. This isn't about boundaries. It's about you being controlling and calling it feminism. He signs the papers right there at the table. His hands are shaking with anger. You know what the really tragic part is, Norma? You probably think you're the victim here. You probably think I'm just another man who couldn't handle a strong woman. But you're not strong. Strong people don't need to control their partners to feel powerful. He gets up to leave. You're manipulative and controlling, and you've convinced yourself it's progressive. That's not strength. That's delusion. Slam the door as he leaves. 6 months later, divorce is final. Honestly, probably for the best. We were clearly incompatible. He needed someone who would just automatically be available for intimacy regardless of how he acted. I needed someone who understood that physical intimacy should be connected to emotional intimacy and respect. John was clearly too insecure to handle a relationship where he had to actually earn affection. Probably better off with someone more traditional who won't challenge his assumptions about male entitlement in relationships. Some men just can't evolve beyond their conditioning. At least now I know what to watch out for in future relationships. Need to find someone who understands that conscious, intentional intimacy is healthier than just defaulting to patriarchal expectations. Honestly, dodged a bullet with John. His anger issues were really concerning toward the end. All that shouting and aggression just because I tried to create a more equitable dynamic. Really showed his true colors. Still think what I was doing was healthy and progressive. Maybe just ahead of its time. Someday men will understand that women being more intentional about intimacy is actually better for everyone. Anyway, back on the dating apps. This time being very upfront about my values and expectations. No point in wasting time with men who aren't ready for a truly equal partnership. Plenty of fish in the sea. Next time we'll find someone more emotionally mature who doesn't think marriage means automatic access to my body. John can go find his traditional housewife who never questions anything. I'll find someone who appreciates conscious, boundaried love. His loss, really.